Hello and welcome to TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. 3 Hong Kong residents were found guilty of conspiring to carry out bomb attacks during the anti-government protests of 2019 and 2020. But they were cleared of terrorism charges along with 4 others. Mimo Singai reports.
5 of the 8 defendants were found not guilty. The cases date back to January and February 2020, when a homemade bomb was placed in a men's toilet at the emergency ward and Caritas Medical Center in Cheung Sa Wan, another bomb at Lo Hu MTR station. No one was injured in both incidents. Prosecution said that the group had also planned to place a bomb in a Cheung Kwan No car park in March of the same year, but police had arrested them the day before their planned date. After a 4-day closed-door deliberation, a jury of 9 returned a verdict at High Court on Thursday afternoon, concluding a 163-day trial of the terrorism case. Defendants Ho Chat-wei, Li Ka-peng, Ng Ji-lok, Zheng Ka-zhen, Yuan Yi-si, Zheng Chek-kei, and Ho Pui-yan were acquitted of a count of conspiracy to commit bombing of prescribed objects. The first defendant, Ho Chat-wei, second defendant, Li Ka-peng, and fourth defendant, Zheng Ka-zhen, were found guilty of an alternative offense of conspiracy to cause an explosion likely to endanger life or cause serious injury to property. The 8th defendant, Zhao Hongman, was acquitted of attempting to make an explosive. The court is adjourned to October 10th to announce the sentencing for the 3 convicted defendants. Williams 9, TVB News.
Police say they will continue to actively use Hong Kong's national security law for future prosecutions. This comes after the verdict of the city's 2nd anti-terrorism trial was delivered. Mimo Singai again.
The first 7 defendants of the bombing plot case were acquitted of conspiracy to commit bombing of prescribed objects, an offense under the city's United Nations anti-terrorism law. It is also Hong Kong's 2nd UN anti-terrorism trial. Speaking to the media after the verdict, police stressed that they had provided sufficient evidence to the court. The force said they will actively use the Hong Kong national security law in the future to optimize prosecutions. A senior counsel said the public should trust the rule of law.
I think we should not start off with the premise that we should get people convicted. People should only be convicted if the law requires them to be convicted. In other words, the legal requirements set out by the law are all met. So I think one cannot judge by the result of one case or 2 cases or a few cases and then immediately jump to the conclusion that there is something wrong with the law.
Momos 9, TVB News.
The draft bill on regulating online ride-hailing services will be gazetted tomorrow and have its first reading in the Legislative Council next Wednesday. The Transport and Logistics Bureau says the draft bill proposes that online ride-hailing services must be provided by licensed platforms. Operating without a license can result in a fine of $1 million and 1 year's imprisonment. Private cars and drivers will also need to be licensed. It's proposed that only private cars registered in an individual's name can apply for the license, and the private car must be less than 12 years old. The police will launch a citywide crackdown on inattentive driving next week. It will also target traffic offenses by truck drivers. Drones will be deployed for law enforcement on Sheko Road and Route Twisk. Samantha Lee tells us more.
The police reported 288 fatal and serious traffic accidents in the first 7 months of this year, marking a 47% drop year-on-year. Nearly half of the 49 deceased were pedestrians, 20% more than that of last year. The force that dangerous driving was the most common reason for the tragedies, with most cases involving goods vehicles. Starting next week, the force will launch a high-profile law enforcement operation across the city, targeting common traffic offenses by drivers, such as speeding, careless driving, and ignoring traffic light signals. The crackdown will also target offenses by truck drivers, such as dangerous driving, defective vehicles, and overloading. Meanwhile, drones will be used to aid law enforcement for the first time.
The reason why we are deploying drones for targeting serious traffic offense, like crossing double white line, it is because we have chosen these two locations, Settle Road and Route 3 as a pilot location. As I mentioned, these two locations, they have some geographical limitations. By deploying drones, we can overcome these limitations, enabling coverage of areas that previously we have difficulty to enforce.
The police added there will be red and blue flashing lights to indicate drone operations. Some drivers said they will stay alert when driving. This driver said there are many trucks running at high speed on the road. He believed the law enforcement operation will have a deterrent effect. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
High-speed supply chain and outsourced logistics provider of Hong Kong Post was ordered by the High Court to liquidate on Wednesday. A postal union said delivery service should not be affected, but a lawmaker doubts if the government had assessed the company's financial situation in the tendering process. The firm was involved in delays in the provision of MPF contributions last year. A postal worker union stated that it had been informing Hong Kong Post about the company's situation since last year. A union representative said the Hong Kong Post has alternative plans for delivering mail, as it uses other logistics companies, and high speed actually accounts for a minority of deliveries. Lawmaker Dennis Leung doubts whether the department had assessed High Speed's financial situation properly during the tendering process. The contacts involved totaled around $30 million. President Xi Jinping met today with multiple foreign leaders who are in Beijing to attend commemorations marking the anniversary of the end of World War II. He called on countries to jointly safeguard the outcomes of the victory, stressing that only unity and self-strengthening hold the promise of hope in countercurrents of unilateralism and the law of the jungle. During a meeting with Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, Xi praised Slovakia's adherence to its friendship with China while pushing for closer China-EU links amid trade tensions. Fico had pledged to enhance bilateral cooperation in various fields and welcomed more Chinese enterprises to invest in Slovakia. When meeting with his Cuban counterpart, Miguel Diaz-Canel, Xi noted the building of a China-Cuba community with a shared future has made solid progress over the years, and that China stands ready to continue to support Cuba's struggle against interference and blockade. Thanking China's assistance to Cuba's social and economic development, Diaz-Canel reaffirmed commitment to the One China principle and expected further strengthening of all-round cooperation, including jointly promoting high-quality Belt and Road initiatives. Xi also met with Vietnamese leader Luong Quang and Lao President Thong Luong Sisulit. He has prompted further collaboration on security and law enforcement with Laos to crack down on cross-border gambling and telefraud crimes. U.S. President Donald Trump says he finds the military parade in Beijing on Wednesday very impressive and that he has good relationships with those leaders who attended the ceremony. He spoke when he met with the media alongside the visiting Polish President Karol Nawrocki.
I thought it was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was very, very impressive. But I understood the reason they were doing it, and they were hoping I was watching, and I was watching. My relationship with all of them is very good. We're going to find out how good it is over the next week or two.
However, he said he believed the U.S. should have been acknowledged in President Xi Jinping's speech for helping China gain its freedom. The Ministry of Commerce in Beijing has announced anti-circumvention measures on certain optical fiber imports from the U.S., including tariffs of up to 78.2%. Danny Cho has details.
The Commerce Ministry's announcement was made late on Wednesday, citing American producers' evasion of existing anti-dumping or countervailing rules. The new levies, which went into immediate effect, range from 33.3% to 78.2% and will remain until April 2028. They cover a type known as cut-off shifted single-mode optical fiber used mainly in long-haul telecommunication networks. The ministry said an investigation was launched on March the 4th into the products originating in the United States after it received an application from a domestic firm. The probe concluded that U.S. exporters altered trade patterns without commercial justification to ship the optical fiber to China. A statement said relevant measures were taken to fully protect the legitimate rights of all interested parties. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the legal fight over tariffs continue. Last week, the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit in Washington, D.C. deemed most of Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs illegal, as well as separate duties on China, Canada, and Mexico imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The Federal Circuit said the president had exceeded authority. However, it's allowing the existing tariffs to stay at least until October the 14th for High Court review. The Trump administration on Wednesday asked the Supreme Court to weigh in on its appeal to keep the widespread tariffs in place. Trump reiterated the U.S. may have to unwind trade deals with the EU, Japan, and South Korea, and warned of devastation if duties he imposed citing emergency powers are struck down.
We made a deal with the European Union where they're paying us almost $1 trillion, and they're happy to do it. You know what? They're happy. It's done. These deals are all done. I guess we'd have to unwind them. Our country has a chance to be unbelievably rich again, but it can also be unbelievably poor again. If we don't win that case, our country is going to suffer so greatly.
Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Meanwhile, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said on Telegram that Russia will take more Ukrainian territory and go after British property after London said it had spent around $1.3 billion raised from frozen Russian assets on weapons for Ukraine. This as UK Defense Secretary John Healey arrived in Kyiv Wednesday for talks with his Ukrainian counterpart, Denis Shmyhal. The two ministers will coordinate the main issues of the next meeting in the Ramstein format, as well as joint defense projects, including strengthening defense capabilities between the two countries. A federal judge has ruled U.S. President Donald Trump's administration unlawfully terminated about $2.2 billion in grants awarded to Harvard University. Daniel Rowell tells us more.
The decision by U.S. District Judge Alison Burroughs in Boston marks a major legal victory for Harvard. This as it seeks to cut a deal that could bring an end to the White House's multi-front conflict with the oldest and richest university in the U.S. The Cambridge, Massachusetts-based school became a central focus of U.S. President Donald Trump's administration's broad campaign to leverage federal funding to force change at American universities. Trump says the institutions are gripped by anti-Semitic and radical left ideologies. His administration cancelled hundreds of grants awarded to Harvard researchers on the grounds the school failed to do enough to address harassment of Jewish students on its campus amid protests against the Israel-Hamas conflict. Harvard sued, arguing the Trump administration was retaliating against it in violation of its free speech rights after it refused to meet officials' demands it overhaul its governance, hiring, and academic programs to align with their ideological agenda. Burroughs, an appointee of former U.S. President Barack Obama, agreed, saying while Harvard had tolerated hateful behavior for too long, the Trump administration used anti-Semitism as a smokescreen for a targeted, ideologically motivated assault on the U.S.'s premier universities. She said the administration's press campaign resulted in it terminating Harvard's grants without complying with the law and retaliating against the school in violation of its free speech rights under the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. Burroughs said it was the job of courts to safeguard academic freedom and ensure important research is not improperly subjected to arbitrary and procedurally infirm grant terminations. She barred the Trump administration from terminating or freezing any additional federal funding to Harvard and blocked it from continuing to withhold payment on existing grants or refusing to award new funding to the university in the future. Some Harvard students praised the decision.
Honestly, That makes me very relieved because I have like big research goals. I know other people here also have like research goals. They want to have their projects funded. They want to have their own startups. And these are really cool ideas that I think need to be supported.
I think obviously it's very justified and that the administration's actions were overstepping their boundaries and were unlawful.
White House spokesperson Liz Huston vowed the Trump administration will appeal the ruling by what she called an activist Obama-appointed judge. Dan Harrell, TV News.
A quick-moving wildfire has burned homes in a California gold rush town settled around 1850 by Chinese miners. The fire near a Chinese camp is threatening the few remaining historic structures. The roughly 100 residents in the Sierra Nevada foothills town had to evacuate. A shuttered Catholic church dating back to 1855 and the town's general store seemed to be intact. But on some lots, all that remained were charred brick walls and scorched trees. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.